Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're attempting something pretty ambitious, I think. We've pulled together sources that cover, well, literally thousands of years.
Yeah, it's quite a spread. We're talking ancient Greek philosophy, Eastern spiritual texts, some classic military strategy, and then jumping right into, 21st century management thinking.
It seems like a huge jump between those worlds.
Yeah.
So what's the goal here? What are we trying to synthesize from all this?
Well, the mission really is to cut through the noise of context. Forget whether it's a battlefield, an ancient city, or a modern company for a second. We're looking for those bedrock principles.
Okay.
The foundational ideas about what makes human action effective, what defines real leadership. We're sort of searching for that universal character ethic, the thing that makes systems work and last no matter when or where.
Because having Sun Tzu next to, say, Viktor Frankl or Aristotle alongside Navy SEALs,
Yeah.
it kind of suggests there's something deeper going on, right? Something that doesn't just change with technology or politics.
Exactly that. You could have the smartest strategy, the newest tech, whatever. But if the leader or the organization itself lacks that internal foundation, the character, the integrity, that sense of accountability, well, the strategy doesn't mean much, does it?
Right. It falls apart.
So this dive for you listening is about giving you a framework, not just to see what great leaders do on the outside, but to understand who they need to be on the inside, how they manage all that complexity and keep performance high, for the long haul.
Right. Let's start building that internal foundation. Where better to begin than with the ancient Greeks?
Yeah.
Aristotle, right? He talks about the good life, eudaimonia. Sets a pretty high bar.
He really does. It's not just about feeling good. For Aristotle, the good life demands, and this is his phrase, the best and most complete virtue, and crucially, experienced over a complete life.
A complete life. So no shortcuts.
Definitely no shortcuts. He's very clear on this. He says something like, one swallow does not make a spring, nor does one day. Same way, one good day or even a short period doesn't make you truly happy or fulfilled.
It's a long game, which makes sense for organizations, too, not just individuals. You need sustained ethical practice.
Absolutely. Decades of it, potentially. And within that life, he makes this really useful distinction between two types of virtues. We need both.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first you have the ethical virtues. These are the ones we often think about. Justice, courage, temperance, virtues of character, basically. How you behave.
Got it. Standard stuff, almost.
Sort of. But then you have the virtues of thought. And this is where it gets really interesting for leadership, I think. He talks about practical wisdom, phronesis, and theoretical wisdom.
Practical wisdom versus theoretical. So knowing stuff versus knowing what to do with stuff.
That's a great way to put it. Theoretical wisdom is understanding the big picture, the universal truths, the why. But practical wisdom, phronesis, that's about deliberating well in the real world. It's figuring out what's good and advantageous, not just for you, but for everyone involved in this specific messy situation you're facing right now. It's ethical decision-making on the fly.
So a leader could be brilliant strategically, know all the market theories, but if they lack that practical wisdom,
they won't know how to actually motivate their team during a crisis or how to apply that brilliant strategy in a way that works with these people, this culture. Their leadership is incomplete, flawed even.
Okay. And Aristotle asks which virtue is, the most important.
Yeah, he wrestles with that. He kind of leans towards theoretical wisdom as the highest human thing we can do, pure contemplation, and this is a big but for practical leadership.
Wow.
He says the virtues and the education you need to instill them have to fit the existing political constitution. They have to work within the system you actually have.
Meaning what counts as courage might look different in a super competitive sales team versus, say, a research lab taking big risks. The context shapes the virtue.
Exactly. The virtues aren't just abstract ideals. They're requirements for that specific organization or society to function well. And conversely, if your society values the wrong things.
Like focusing only on money, as he criticized some states for doing.
Right. If the Constitution elevates wealth above all else, then the virtues it encourages, maybe ruthlessness in business or something, are ultimately hollow. They won't lead to the true good life, just accumulation. The character ethic gets warped.
That focus on internal character really resonates with the Stoics too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cicero talks about duties.
He does. He discusses these second-grade duties, which aren't just for the perfectly wise sage, but for everyone. The core idea is that your character, your moral compass, has to come before external things.
Like fame, money,
Yeah.
health even.
Even health or personal safety or sometimes even the immediate good of the state. It's about prioritizing your duty, your integrity.
Which brings us to that story of Regulus. That was pretty stark.
It's an incredible example. So Regulus, a Roman general, gets captured by Carthage. They let him go back to Rome on parole, basically, to negotiate a prisoner swap, but he has to swear a solemn oath to return if the deal falls through.
Okay, standard procedure maybe.
But here's the twist. He gets to Rome, goes before the Senate, and argues against the prisoner exchange. He says, look, Rome shouldn't trade its young, capable leaders for me. I'm old news.
Wow. He argued against his own freedom.
Against his own survival. And the Senate listens to him. They refuse the exchange. And because he swore that oath,
he goes back to Carthage, knowing what they'll do.
He goes back, knowing full well he's facing, as Cicero puts it, an implacably cruel enemy and excruciating punishment. He chose certain horrible death over breaking his word.
That's hard to comprehend from a purely practical standpoint. He could have helped Rome more by staying alive.
Right, that's the tension.
Yeah.
From a purely utilitarian view, maybe staying makes sense. But for Cicero and the Stoic ideal, the principle, the sanctity of the oath, his personal integrity trumped everything, even the pragmatic benefit to the state. His duty was internal first.
But hang on. If a CEO today faces a choice like that, maybe revealing a product flaw that will tank the stock versus covering it up, isn't there a clash between that kind of pure ethical duty and, the practical wisdom Aristotle talked about, keeping the company afloat?
Yeah, that is precisely the crucible of leadership, isn't it? The Stoic answer would be something like, the outcome, the stock price, that's ultimately not in your control. What is in your control is your choice, your adherence to the principle, your oath to truth, or whatever it might be.
So control your input, not the output.
In a way, yes. And if we pivot east, the Bhagavad Gita offers a related but distinct perspective. It talks about perfect knowledge, prajapaditu.
Yes, the idea of detachment.
Yeah.
Not being swayed by good or bad results.
Exactly. Perfect knowledge belongs to the person who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it.
So unlike Regulus, who was deeply committed to the duty, the Gita emphasizes detachment from the fruits of the action.
Right. The idea is, when you're truly grounded in this perfect knowledge, you see that the material good or evil, the wins and losses, they're often just temporary constructs. They're not the ultimate reality.
And being detached like that actually helps you act more effectively because you're not driven by fear or greed.
That's the claim. You're free from the emotional roller coaster, so you can act with clarity and purpose. And the Gita lists these incredible qualities, the Daivi Sampadam, that define this state.
Yeah, like 26 of them.
Yeah, it's a whole list. Fearlessness, purifying your existence, charity, self-control, simplicity, truthfulness, not getting angry, gentleness, modesty, forgiveness, fortitude, not being envious.
It sounds like a blueprint for an incredibly stable and resilient leader. Not just nice things to be.
They're presented as the very architecture of a mind that can navigate the world's chaos without getting thrown off balance, which connects beautifully, I think, to how Emerson talks about valor.
Emerson, right. Valor as self-recovery. That sounds more like resilience than just bravery.
It is. For Emerson, true valor isn't just facing danger. It's the power of self-recovery. It's refusing to be outgeneraled, mentally or spiritually.
What does he mean by outgeneraled? Like not letting circumstances defeat you?
Yes, but more specifically, it's about intellectual humility. It's preferring truth to his past apprehension of truth. It's knowing deep down that your current understanding, your winning strategy, your whole worldview may at any time be superseded and decease. The bravest act for Emerson is being willing to say, I might be wrong, and accepting a better truth, even if it completely undermines everything you thought you knew, even if it comes from someone unexpected.
That takes serious humility. And it links straight into Viktor Frankl, doesn't it? Finding meaning even in suffering.
Absolutely. Frankl, from his experiences in concentration camps, realized that meaning isn't something you invent. It's something you detect. It comes from the attitude you choose to take towards unavoidable challenges or opportunities.
So meaning is about responsibility, taking ownership of your response.
Exactly. It requires that proactivity, that acceptance of personal responsibility to answer the question life is asking you in that moment. The situation might be terrible, but you choose the meaning through your response.
And if you can't recover internally, like Emerson said,
then you can't choose a meaningful response, like Frankl said. That internal strength, that character, that willingness to learn and adapt, it's the absolute bedrock. You can't build effective action on a shaky foundation.
Okay, so we've built this internal foundation Virtue, wisdom, detachment, self-recovery. Now, how does that translate into actually leading, into strategy and command? Let's bring in Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu, the master strategist.
Yeah.
His core principle is all about securing the outcome, but maybe not in the way people first think. It's not just about being aggressive.
Right. He says the skillful fighter puts himself into a position which makes defeat impossible. Impossible defeat first, then victory.
Precisely. And he adds that the skillful fighter does not miss the moment for defeating the enemy. So first, security, then decisive action when the time is right.
And that famous line, the winner seeks battle after the victory is won, while the loser fights first and then looks for victory.
It sums it up perfectly. Victory is essentially baked in during the preparation phase. The planning, the positioning, the intelligence, the psychological game, that's where the win happens. The actual fighting is just, well, the confirmation.
Okay, so if preparation is key, that explains why deception is so central to his strategy.
Hugely important. A leader has to be constantly changing plans, shifting arrangements, keeping the enemy guessing. They can't have definite knowledge of what you're doing or planning.
But he takes it even further, doesn't he? Deceiving your own people.
He does. Sun Tzu says a general must sometimes lead his soldiers without them knowing the full why. Keep them focused on their immediate task, compartmentalize information.
Why? To prevent leaks.
Partly, yes. If your soldiers don't know the grand strategy, they can't accidentally reveal it if captured, or even through careless talk. It maintains maximum strategic ambiguity and flexibility for the commander. You control the information flow completely.
Which leads to that almost, well, terrifying tactic of putting your own army in deadly peril, like backing them against a river.
It seems utterly counterintuitive, right? A rookie mistake. But used deliberately, it can be incredibly effective. Think about Han Xin at the Qingxing Pass.
Right. He lines his troops up with the river behind them. No escape route.
Exactly. The enemy sees this, thinks this guy's an idiot, and attacks, expecting an easy win.
But what Han Xin did was remove any option but fighting for survival.
Precisely. No retreat possible means no hesitation, no thought of escape. They had to fight with absolute desperation, like cornered animals. Raw survival instinct kicks in.
And while they were holding the line,
Han Xin had sent a smaller force around the back. While the enemy was focused on the main battle, his cavalry snuck into their now lightly defended camp and swapped out all the enemy flags for Han Xin's flags.
oh wow.
So when the enemy troops, exhausted and probably needing to regroup, finally fell back towards their camp, what did they see?
Their own camp flying enemy colors. Total panic.
Complete psychological collapse. Han Fin didn't just win militarily, he manufactured the enemy's defeat by controlling the psychological state, both of his own desperate troops and his panicked enemy. It's extreme psychological manipulation as strategy.
That intense focus on managing perceptions, both enemy and internal, links really well to Xenophon's portrayal of Cyrus the Great in the Cyropedia. He seems obsessed with his image.
Cyrus is fascinating because he embodies this paradox of leadership. On one hand, he genuinely believed that a ruler must be fundamentally superior in character and ability to those they rule. You don't have the right otherwise.
Makes sense. Earn the right to lead.
But on the other hand, he knew that inherent superiority wasn't always enough or wasn't always visible. So he believed you also had to actively charm people, often using artifice and stagecraft to reinforce that image of superiority.
Like adopting the fancy median dress.
Yeah.
You mentioned that helped him look taller and hide flaws.
Exactly. The sources say the robes concealed defects and added stature. They even used special shoes with thick soles hidden inside to make men seem taller, and makeup ointments and pigments to look healthier or more commanding. It's ancient PR and image management. Pure and simple.
All to project that aura of command.
Absolutely. It was about creating and maintaining the perception of innate superiority that his authority rested on. And he used other things too, like hunting. The chase wasn't just fun.
No, what was it?
It was calculated training. He used it to get his commanders used to hardship, toil, cold, hunger, working together under pressure, managing their physical and mental toughness disguised as sport. Very clever.
But there's a darker side to this manipulation, right? The eunuch bodyguards. That seems ethically challenging.
It is, definitely. That's where the pragmatism of power gets really stark. Cyrus reasoned that people with normal family ties, spouses, kids, lovers, would always have divided loyalties. They'd prioritize family in a crisis. Eunuchs, however, lacked those specific ties. Often socially marginalized, their loyalty, Cyrus figured, would be solely to the ruler, the one person who gave them status, wealth, and protection. It was a cold, hard calculation for ensuring personal security against plots and assassination, especially in conquered cities.
So he felt he had to use these strange devices, as the text calls them, just to stay in power, even if it seems morally questionable.
That appears to be the reasoning. The stakes were absolute power or potential death, so he employed methods he deemed necessary for stability, even if they seem ruthless to us. It highlights that tension between the ideal of the virtuous leader and the often brutal realities of maintaining control.
And that very tension, the potential weakness within the system, the need for legitimate power, brings us to the political philosophers like Hobbes, Rousseau, Locke. They looked at why organizations or states fall apart.
Right. Shifting to that political philosophy lens, Hobbes argues that states often collapse because of flaws baked in from the start, an imperfect institution, or simply a lack of clear, absolute power at the center to enforce order. If the foundation is weak, it's doomed.
But Rousseau warned about concentrating too much power, right?
Yeah.
Especially mixing the lawmaking and the law enforcing parts.
Exactly. Rousseau saw a huge danger in uniting the executive and legislative powers. He said it leads to an ungoverned government, where there's no check on power, no clear separation of duties. The people making the rules shouldn't be the only ones enforcing them. That leads to chaos or tyranny.
Which sets up Locke's crucial point about where the leader's authority actually comes from. It's not just inherent in the person.
Precisely. Locke provides a really important counterweight to someone like Cyrus, who seemed to rule by personal superiority. Locke argues that obedience is owed not to the leader as an individual, but to the public will of the society as expressed in its laws.
So the CEO, the president, the general, they're acting as agents of the system, the Commonwealth.
Yes. Locke is very clear. When the leader acts based on their own private will, ignoring the established laws or the mandate they were given, they basically fire themselves. They degrade themselves back to being just a private citizen with no special power or right to be obeyed.
That's a powerful idea. The leader's legitimacy is conditional on them upholding the system's rules.
Absolutely. It means that even if Sun Tzu's general needs to be deceptive for tactics, or Cyrus uses artifice for image, their long-term sustainable authority depends on operating within legitimate boundaries. True effectiveness requires self-constraint, adherence to the rule of law, not just personal power.
Okay, so we've got the internal character from the ancients, the strategic and political frameworks. And now let's bring this into the modern workplace. How do we build organizations today that are both effective and, well, healthy? Let's start with accountability. That extreme ownership concept from the Navy SEALs sounds intense.
It really is. It's a radical commitment to accountability. The core principle is simple but brutal. When anything goes wrong on your watch, you, the leader, blame yourself. Full stop.
There's that example of the corporate VP.
Right, who complained after a project failed, my team, they just didn't execute the plan.
And the SEAL consultant's response.
It was basically, no, you failed to lead them effectively. If the plan didn't work in the real world, the fault lies with the leader who approved it, who trained the team, who communicated it. The buck stops entirely at the top.
Wow, that must create a very different kind of culture. No finger pointing.
Exactly. It immediately builds trust. Subordinates know they won't be thrown under the bus if something goes wrong. They know the leader owns the outcome. And that trust is essential for the next idea, shared consciousness.
Shared consciousness. Sounds a bit abstract. What does it mean in practice? Like in that team of teams environment they talk about.
It means getting beyond just telling people work together or putting up posters that say quality first. Those are useless without systemic change.
So you need to change the structure.
You often have to forcibly break down the old siloed ways of working. Replace it with radical transparency, like open forums where everyone from different teams gets the same big picture view of the mission and the current situation. And you need strong connections between teams, maybe embedding people from one unit into another.
So everyone knows what everyone else is doing and why.
Pretty much. They have the context. And the results can be dramatic. They mentioned one military task force that went from doing about 10 complex raids a month to 300 a month.
17 times faster with the same number of people.
Roughly, yeah. Minimal personnel increase. The agility came from better, faster decision-making because everyone had the full picture, not just their little piece of the puzzle. Decisions could be pushed down to the front lines.
That makes sense. But that kind of speed requires information to flow freely, right?
Yeah.
Which reminds me of the Pixar story. They ran into problems with communication bottlenecks.
They did, especially early on, trying to manage the chaos of making something like Toy Story. They fell into what Ed Catmull called well-intentioned micromanaging. Meaning, they mandated that all communication had to go up and down the official org chart. An animator couldn't just walk over and talk to a modeler about a problem. They had to go through their manager, who'd talk to the other manager, who'd talk to the modeler.
That sounds incredibly slow and frustrating.
It was. It stifled creativity and problem solving, so they made a radical change.
Which was?
Basically, anyone should be able to talk to anyone else at any level about anything relevant at any time without asking permission and without fear of getting in trouble.
Just talk to whoever you need to talk to.
Yes, because unexpected problems need unexpected, fast communication paths to solve them. You can't predict where the next solution will come from, so you need to allow information to flow freely.
And that ties into empowering people to actually solve problems, not just flag them.
Absolutely. The leadership mindset has to shift. You need to assume that small problems and big problems often have similar root causes. Ignoring the small stuff because it's not worth the manager's time is a huge risk.
Because small problems can snowball.
They often do. So if leaders empower more people across the organization to just fix problems they see without needing 3 levels of approval, and crucially, if they tolerate the honest mistakes that will inevitably happen when people try things, then way more problems get nipped in the bud.
Exactly. You unleash the collective problem-solving capacity of the entire organization. It's a powerful systemic defense against things going badly wrong. Empowerment becomes risk management.
Okay, so we need accountability, transparency, free-flowing communication, empowerment. But people need to be working on the right things. How do you get that focus? That brings us to OKRs, objectives, and key results.
Right, OKRs. A framework famously used at places like Google and Intel. The driving principle behind them is surprisingly simple. Less is more.
Focus. Don't try to do everything.
Precisely. The recommendation is stark. Limit yourself or your team to just 3 to 5 main objectives for a given period, like a quarter. And for each objective, have maybe 5 or fewer specific, measurable key results. That forces you to be really clear about priorities, what you are doing, and by implication, what you're not doing.
It sends a very clear signal. It helps everyone say yes to the right things and no to the distractions. That clarity is gold, especially when things are complex or changing fast.
But it's not just about setting goals for people, right? The motivation piece is key.
Hugely important. For OKRs to really work, to get genuine buy-in, teams and individuals should ideally set about half of their own OKRs. It's a mix of top-down strategic direction and bottom-up definition of how to get there.
As opposed to purely top-down goals.
Which often feels like orders being handed down. That tends to kill intrinsic motivation. People treat the goals as chores, not commitments. That bottom-up element is vital for engagement and reinforces that idea of delegated ownership we talked about.
So we have the systems, the goals, but underlying all of this is the human element, trust, which brings us to that metaphor of the emotional bank account.
Ah, yes, Stephen Covey's concept. It's such a useful way to think about trust in any relationship, especially at work.
So the idea is you make deposits into the account.
Exactly. Deposits are things like basic courtesy, kindness, being honest, keeping your promises, apologizing sincerely when you mess up. Each positive interaction builds up a reserve of trust.
And having a high balance means?
It means when inevitable issues arise, a mistake, a disagreement, a miscommunication, that reserve acts like a buffer. People give you the benefit of the doubt, communication stays open, easy, effective. The relationship is resilient.
But you could also make withdrawals.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Things like being rude, disrespecting people, ignoring their input, breaking promises, being arrogant, blaming others. These drain the account fast.
And when the account is overdrawn.
That's when you get what Covey called tension city or memo heaven. Everything becomes guarded, defensive, people watch their backs, communication becomes overly formal and cautious, CYA emails fly around. It completely kills the agility, the transparency, the psychological safety needed for high performance.
So all those fancy systems, shared consciousness, OKRs, empowered teams, they won't work if the leader is constantly making withdrawals from everyone's emotional bank account.
They absolutely weren't. The system relies on trust. And trust is built or destroyed in those daily interactions, which loops us back really to the fundamental assumptions leaders make about their people. McGregor's theory X versus theory Y.
Theory X being the assumption that people are lazy, need controlling, punishment.
Right. The classic command and control model. Theory Y, on the other hand, assumes people want to do meaningful work, they are capable of self-direction, and that creativity thrives when you trust them and involve them. Participatory management.
And as sources suggest, Theory Y is essential for innovation.
Yes, because if you assume trust, Theory Y, you create the conditions for people to bring their best selves to work. Even when things get tough, the commitment to doing good work stays high because people feel respected and valued. It aligns perfectly with maintaining that high balance in the emotional bank account.
It really feels like we've come full circle. From Aristotle's internal virtue to modern systems, it all seems to point back to character and trust as the linchpins.
It does, whether it's Regulus holding fast to his oath even unto death, or a modern leader creating memo heaven by being disrespectful and untrustworthy. The outcome is the same when that foundation is missing. The system breaks down. It can't achieve synergy.
The leader's failure to cultivate their own internal character, like we discussed in Section 1.
Inevitably leads them to build systems based on control, mistrust, and opacity. And those systems simply cannot deliver the kind of health, agility, and sustained success we see described in Section 3. The internal and external are completely linked.
Wow. Okay, that was a whirlwind tour through, 2,500 years of thinking about leadership? But incredibly coherent, actually. We started way back with Aristotle, demanding that complete virtue over a complete life for true fulfillment, that long game of self-mastery.
Then we jump to Sun Tzu, showing us that real strategic genius means ensuring victory is basically guaranteed before you even commit to the fight. Preparation and positioning above all.
And we landed squarely in the modern era, looking at leaders who intentionally design systems, things like extreme ownership, shared consciousness, radical transparency, like at Pixar specifically, to build psychological safety, to make sure that problems, even small ones, get surfaced and solved quickly by people who feel empowered.
And threading through all of it, I think, is this core insight. What all these incredibly diverse sources seem to tell us is that lasting success isn't about finding one magic bullet strategy or the latest tech trend.
No. What is it about?
It seems to be fundamentally about the leader's own internal compass, their commitment to, correct principles, and then their willingness to translate that into systems that actively manage complexity by pushing ownership down, by building a culture where character, where integrity, where truthfulness. That's the real currency.
Yeah, that makes sense. We saw that paradox, though. The leader needing to be genuinely better, more worthy, like Cyrus believed. But also sometimes needing to use artifice, perception management, to maintain order.
And then Locke bringing in the crucial check. Ultimately, power isn't personal. Obedience is owed to the law, to the system, not just to the leader's private will.
Okay, so here's something for you to chew on as you reflect on all this. We heard how vital it is for effectiveness, especially today, to empower your people, letting them fix problems without needing your specific okay every single time. If that's true, if your success depends on that level of trust and delegation, what belief about your own control, or maybe about the absolute necessity of a strict chain of command, might you, as a leader, need to sacrifice first?